This is Dads Watching Sports. It's the show by dads who watch sports, for dads who watch sports, or just dads in general. Here are the dads with a plan for every hashtag dad life and sports fan, Kyle Castles and Michael Draper.
Welcome in to Dads Watching Sports. I am Michael Draper. He is Kyle Castles. It is episode 75 of Dads Watching Sports, Sunday, August the 1st, 2021. We are broadcasting live on the Off the Ball Network, as always. Kyle, I'm back from vacation.
How was Bora Bora?
You mentioned Bora Bora last week. Well, Destin was great. I can't exactly tell you how Bora Bora was, but Destin was fantastic. I know I listened in to a great job. First off, great job last week filling in. And I do mean that all sincerely. You guys were great. You had Ryan Watson and Jonathan Boren from Broadway Sports Media joining you. You guys were fantastic. It was great to hear all the great stuff you had to talk about, the Olympics, vacation life. Kyle, I jumped in the comments on the show last week and said vacationing without the kids. Man, that's the way to go. We spent 4 days in Destin without children, and it was awesome.
I don't know if you saw it, but we actually put that comment up and just
you did
talked about how it must be nice to be in your little hut over the water in Bora Bora with no kids.
Well, again, Destin was fantastic. Bora Bora was, I'm sure it was lovely for those that were there. But Kyle, we've got a lot to talk about. We could go in so many different directions this week, whether we're looking at, you've got the Simone Biles kind of situation happened in the Olympics. The other great Olympic stories, you look at Caleb Dressel, who just absolutely owned the pool. Now we're in the track and field, all the great stories coming from there as well. We could get into all that, but we're not going to really have time to do that. Kyle, you and I attended, or at least we tried to attend, a concert last night. Garth Brooks in Nashville, but unfortunately Mother Nature had different plans. We'll get to that in just a little bit. Kyle, we got a new bracket coming out in the next couple of weeks. We're launching this in partnership with our good buddies over there, the Bracketeers. And we're excited about that. We'll have some details on that as well. But Kyle, it's August, man. It's officially the month of college football. College football will start before this month is over. And so over the course of the next couple of weeks, we're going to jump through kind of the major conferences and preview all those major conferences. And we're going to be joined by not only some dads, but some guys and some girls, some dads and some moms who cover those conferences and who also can talk into some dad and mom life. And tonight, Kyle, we're starting with the Southeastern Conference. So we've got some great guests. So last week, we had the guys from Broadway Sports Media here in Nashville on the show. And tonight, Kyle, we're joined by Brent Dougherty. Brent is the co-host of the 3HL show on 104.5 The Zone with Dawn Davenport and former UT Vol Ron Slay. It's on every week, every day, Monday through Friday from 3 to 7. Kyle, we do a 1 hour a week. They do 4 hours a day, which is pretty great. Been with 104.5 The Zone since about 2008. We're going to bring him on now. Brent, how are you doing, sir? And welcome to Dad's Watching Sports.
Michael, Kyle, thanks for the invite, man. Glad to be here. Looking forward to talking with you.
Hey, we're glad you're here, man.
Absolutely. So, Brent, before we get into college football, I know you were at SEC Media Days, or you at least you were there to get some of the info from that. But some kind of late breaking news in the Nashville scene, and it is SEC related, as Kumar Rocker, the ace from one of the two aces from the Vanderbilt Commodore baseball team, signed or was drafted by the New York Mets with the 11th pick, just kind of broke later this afternoon that they are not going to sign him. Do you know any kind of the latest there, or were you surprised to see that come up?
Yeah, very, very surprised because of the way that he dominated this year, right? Especially late. And you watch Kumar Rocker's stuff, and it becomes really surprising that he has an elbow issue, because what would that guy be like without an elbow issue? And that's one thing. The second thing is, how could a Major League Baseball team not do their due diligence and figure out what was going on before they draft a guy in the top 10? That's the other thing that kind of blows my mind. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with Kumar Rocker. I guess he He sits out, goes back in the draft next year, gets that elbow fixed, whatever the issue is, and we move on from there. So, very, very surprised to see that story just because of the way that guy had been pitching. You hadn't seen really any kind of downfall in terms of innings, number of pitches, and his ability to get people out.
Absolutely. And just an unbelievable young man, too. Go ahead, Kyle.
Yep.
Except for Game 3 of the College World Series final, where Mississippi State beat the Vanderbilt Commodores and won their first team national title. I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
Brent, if you can't tell already, Kyle is a diehard Mississippi State fan. So,
hey, congrats, Kyle! First national championship in any sport. That's phenomenal. I've been to a football game at Mississippi State. I absolutely love it. People are like, "Do the cowbells get you?" I'm like, "No, dude. That's part of college football. That's what they are, who they are, and I love it. And I feel good for a bunch of living in Nashville has become like the SEC melting pot. There's no doubt about it. Like, if you're young and you want to go live in a cool city, when you get out of college, you're moving to Nashville. When I went through college, it was Atlanta probably, but now it's Nashville. So we all know people from every school, and I feel good for my Mississippi State fans, friends, because that was an awesome run. Awesome.
Yeah, it absolutely was. Well, let's jump into some football talk here. Brent, I guess it's very easy to say it was an eventful week at SEC Media Days, and not even really just talking about what was going to happen this year in the SEC. But news broke pretty early on that Oklahoma and Texas had decided they were going to part ways with the Big 12 and come to Kyle, where the big boys play in the SEC. So just kind of initial thoughts there, Brent, about Oklahoma and Texas coming on. It looks like 2025 could be a little bit earlier, but what are your thoughts on both those teams coming to the SEC?
Yeah, first things first, I don't think there's any way they get to 2025 without Oklahoma and Texas in the SEC. But we'll come back to that. No, you know what's amazing about that story to me is that they've been talking as long as they have, and it didn't get out. Because like sports writers and sports administrators and coaches and ADs and president, they all love to talk and chat. It's like a sewing circle. I can't believe that news didn't get out until Wednesday at SEC Media Days. And I guess A&M was probably surprised that it didn't get out either, because 100% that's who leaked it.
Oh, yeah.
They happen to be going through SEC Media Days on Wednesday when that news came out. Also, Ross Bjork, the athletic director at Texas A&M, who was at Western Kentucky 2 stops ago in just north of Nashville. Great dude. He happened to be at SEC Media Days, the only AD in attendance. So they were ready with their quote to fire out, we want to be the only SEC school in the state of Texas. He was ready with that. So it was hilarious. But that came down Wednesday. We go on the air at 3. That story came down about, 2:30 in the afternoon. So we had to scramble real quick, because it's not like, it's like, oh, this coach decided to leave. This is like 2 of the main brands in college sports are moving conferences.
Yeah.
And they're going to the SEC, which is already the best conference, the most powerful conference. I mean, just look at the NBA draft. No team had more players drafted in the first round than the SEC. That's not even our sport. So Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC is huge. Big 12, immediately you think they're done.
Yeah.
Right? So all of this happens like while we're sitting at our table getting ready to go on the air. We had planned on having Clark Lee, a couple of Vanderbilt players. Like, we had mapped out the show and then totally put all that on podcast, because we had to talk about the biggest college football story that I've seen in my career come down. And on top of all that, Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the Southeastern Conference, was booked on our show at 4:00. So he comes and sits down. Our first 3 questions were about something that he had no comment about. But, we tried, and he told us that we were good at our job, which made me feel good. But he also referred me to the SEC manual to one of my questions, which I've never had anyone tell me to go to the manual. But that was funny. So as he's sitting doing our show, every national college football writer you could think of was standing right behind us with their notebook out, writing down everything he was saying, which wasn't much. But to think about Oklahoma and Texas, when that story came down, less than 10 days later, it all happened. In a span of 9 days, it all happened. It's crazy.
Unbelievable. And consider me as a person who had no idea, Kyle, that there was an SEC manual. I guess we need to brush up on our. I guess we need to brush up on our reading a little bit to be prepared for this year's season.
The question that I asked after I asked him about Oklahoma and Texas coming to the SEC, and he no commented it, I said, big picture, like 20 years from now, if somebody wanted to get in the conference, what is that process? Is there a vote among member institutions? If my mother was an attorney and she told me never ask a question you don't know the answer to, I knew the answer to the question, but I still asked it, and he said, refer to the manual. Well, the answer was 75% of the schools,
right,
which is 10 and a half. So, at that point, everybody's trying to figure out, can A&M sway Florida or LSU or Missouri or somebody like that? And ultimately, we all know that every vote the SEC is going to have is going to be 14-0, and that's what it was.
No doubt.
Well, it leads me to the question of, how do I get the SEC manual? Do I need to just, call down and see if the Pirate in Starkville can like email me a copy or what?
Oh my gosh! Could you imagine if somebody let Mike Leach write the SEC manual?
That would be
redo this thing, man. Because that guy is a storyline at SEC Media Days for sure, and we'll get to that later. But he is so freaking funny. He once did 3HL, I think, right when we came on the air. We started the show in January 2010. And he came on, I don't know, a year or two after that. Anyway, it was the off season. He was at Key West on a bicycle doing the interview.
That's awesome.
Just phenomenal. Yeah.
That is absolutely awesome.
So Oklahoma, Texas, they have dominated the sports headlines, the college athletics headlines the last week or so. But beyond that, do you have maybe 2 or 3 takeaways, Brent, from SEC Media Days that you want to share with us? Or is everything Oklahoma, Texas?
Well, we went and listened to Mike Leach talk, and we'll go back to Mississippi State there. We went and listened to Mike Leach talk in the big room. That's where all the journalists are and everything. And I had forgotten that this was the first opportunity that Tennessee media guy had to ask him about Tennessee's flirtation with him and John Curry going to see him and John Curry being rogue and Tennessee not knowing where he was. And it looked like Mike Leach was going to go to Tennessee. The coup, which I thought was a hilarious answer. And then somebody asked him about vaccines, and he was like, well, our doctors handle that. And the guy asked him, are you vaccinated? He goes, well, if I am or if I'm not going to tell you, which I thought was a hilarious answer too. So, I'm kind of funny in that people stand out to me more than issues. And I love that guy. I think he's entertaining. I think he's interesting. And I think he's great for the conference and really good for the sport.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were all expecting just fantastic sound bites on Egg Bowl week with Mike Leach on one side and Lane Kiffin on the other, and we didn't get that this past year. So Fingers crossed that happens.
It's unfortunate that they like each other. You know what I mean? I really wish that they didn't like each other. That somebody, maybe Lane Kiffin, made a move on somebody, one of Mike Leach's friends. I don't know. But that would be great. Another thing that stood out to me, honestly, guys, was talking with people from the member institutions that were there about vaccinations, because that's such a hot button take. And you got the pro-vax guy and you got the anti-vax guy, and they hate each other, and we have to politicize everything. So, it becomes these flammable, this flammable issue and all this. But talking to people about, honestly, what do you do about this? Because, the SEC came out and said, look, if you have to move a game because you don't have, a plentiful roster because of COVID, then you're forfeiting that game. We don't have dates built into the schedule this year like we did last year. So from a coaching perspective, if you gave them truth serum, they would want everybody vaccinated so they could play their games and win. I mean, because that's why they get paid. That's what they That's why they do what they do. But it's kind of obviously a touchy situation. So some of the people at some of the schools were like, it's tough to tell a kid, what to do. We're not going to do that. Then you've got parents also that have concerns. And so, and even if you're against it or for it or whatever, you can understand people having concerns about this and that and the other, right? Like, but then you've got Nick Saban who stands at a podium and goes, if we don't get vaccinated, it is a competitive disadvantage. And then moves on. And everybody's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So it's wild to hear, one school, their people talking about it's a really tough issue because you're dealing with parents and kids and things like that. And then you've got Saban who says, you know what, it's a competitive disadvantage if we don't do it. And they're at 90%. So,
yep.
I thought that was an interesting, kind of side talk deal down there.
Oh yeah, and just the fact that we're in that discussion, here we are in 2021, and we're having to have a discussion about players being vaccinated and what rate and what that's going to impact on the season is just absolutely remarkable. We're talking with Brent Dougherty of 104.5 The Zone. He's the co-host of the 3HL show there. For all the SEC football takes, you can listen to them Monday through Friday from 3 to 7 on 104.5 The Zone in Nashville, and I'm sure you can find that on any kind of streaming service as well. Brent, we're going to shift gears really quickly before we let you go. This is a show called Dads Watching Sports. We talk a lot about sports, but we also talk family life. And I know when you and I were corresponding about you coming on the show, you said, hey, I might be in the car on the way back from Gatlinburg. One of your kids was at a camp. So tell us about family life and kind of specifically about how sports kind of fit in with all that, with your job and with your kids playing sports and all that.
I've loved sports my whole life, and I was more of a baseball guy because I'm like 6'2" now, but I was a very, very small kid, so I played baseball because small guy can play baseball, right? Jose Altuve. You can just go down the list of guys that can do that at that age. I was 4'11" in the 9th grade. Oh man! So that was my sport. My wife played basketball in high school and growing up, so we believe in kids sports. And the thing about kids sports is it teaches life. And so I want them playing as much as they want, as many sports as they want. I've talked to so many coaches about that, and they always say, every single one of them you ask says, do not have them specialize in one sport. Have them branch out and, have fun, play to have fun. But the other thing, as I said, it teaches life, in my opinion. And so you learn how to deal with the ups, but you also learn how to deal with the lows, like the highs and the lows, right? Like sports teaches you how to fail. In my opinion. And that's why I love baseball. So all my kids played baseball and then they play other things. But the reason why I like baseball for them is, and for kids is because it teaches you how to fail. Everybody's going to strike out. Yep. Everybody's going to make an error. Everybody's going to walk a guy that leads to a big inning. Like everybody's going to deal with that, but you're also going to have successes. So we're a big sports family. I've got a senior now, in a couple of weeks. I've got a 9th grader and I've got a 5th grader, and they're all across the board. The oldest and the youngest both played football, both played baseball. The middle kid plays baseball, plays tennis, plays basketball. He loves playing basketball. So we're all across the board. But, for me, it's a way to experience things with your kids and through your kids and be able to teach life through the ups and downs.
Yeah, I grew up playing sports as well, and I know that for my parents, they talk about all of the moments. My sister won a state title in softball when she was in high school, and she never lets my dad live that down because he wasn't at the game. That was actually my final college game, so he came to my game, and Mom went to the softball game, and he didn't get to see her win a state title. But it's crazy. And as being a parent, I feel like those are the things that you start to remember, or you always remember. So that's kind of the question. Your best sports memory with your kids so far. It could be something they accomplished. It could be just something you watched with them. Anything that you've done with your kids, with your family, that's centered around sports.
Oh man, we've been to so many games together, so I could pull all of those things. But for just from a dad perspective, and you guys get this, watching your kids deal with high pressure situations and come through. Yeah. is the best. So like with Connor, my oldest, he's a long snapper and he's going to various places. Like he got invited to go to Texas Tech and get evaluated. And that was awesome. He went to Wisconsin for a camp. He went to Tennessee for a camp. So for me, watching him snap for punts and field goals on the power tee or near the power tee was just unbelievable. I felt like I was outside my body on that one. With my middle kid playing travel baseball for years that he did, the opportunity to go to Cooperstown, New York at 12U and go through that process. His head coach was R.A. Dickey, which is a whole other thing. But just watching those kids like just get lost in the love of the game and not be nothing from the outside world could get them that week. And that was just awesome. And then Drew, my youngest, we went to Pigeon Forge to play a 10U baseball tournament up there, and we were the only team from Tennessee. So that was cool to see him playing against kids from other states and things like that. And then they ended up winning the tournament. So being there and celebrating that with your kid with strikeouts and with triples and with runs scored and with the errors and the good and the bad and all that, but it came out as a win was phenomenal. So those are some of my memories with each of my kids.
All right. Last two things here, Brent, then we'll let you go. So we often talk on the show just about kind of like legacy and what are the things that we're hoping we're instilling in our kids, or what are the things that we hope they remember about us? So 3 words that your kids would use to describe you as dad.
Man, that's a tough one. I hope they would say like loving,
Yeah.
I'm certain they would say competitive. Beyond that, maybe there, I think so much of life is simple. Like just be there for your wife, be there for your kids, be there for yourself. Be there for each other, your friends. I just think being there is so important, and relationships to me is what life's about. Because when you're laying on your deathbed and people are talking about you, they're not going to care about this or that you did professionally. How many lives did you touch? How many people did you help? How much advice did you give out that might have worked? Maybe it didn't. I don't know. But to me, those are the things that are important. What would they say about me? I don't know. Old, crotchety, mad. I don't know. Who knows? But,
all the above.
Hopefully when they become adults, they look back, right, and understand that we were there to instruct and to help and to help them become men that can lead their families.
Absolutely. All right, last question here, and this one might be a tougher answer, but it's not quite as heavy hitting. So I alluded to it at the very beginning of our show. We do these brackets kind of periodically throughout the year. We've done a best sports movie bracket. We've done a cereal bracket. We just finished our best sports venue, Wrigley Field, winning a 64 team playoff for best sports venue. But we're starting one later this fall, the best tailgate food. So if you had to give your number 1 overall seed for the best tailgate food, what are you going with?
I'm simple, man. I'm a wing guy. I love wings. Give me wings anytime, especially outdoors. Before a football game, I'm in. And it doesn't matter where I am. I can be in Nashville. I can be in Athens. I can be in Gainesville. I can be in Baton Rouge. I can be in Starkville, Kyle. And we could chow down on some wings. I'll be happy.
There we go. All right, Brent. Well, thanks so much for joining us again on Dad's Watching Sports. You can catch Brent every Monday through Friday from 3 to 7 Central Time on 3HL and 104.5 The Zone, again with Dawn Davenport and Ron Slay, former UT Vol. Brent, it's been great catching up, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Listen, guys, I appreciate the opportunity, man. Keep growing this thing and keep pounding. You never know where it'll take you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you guys.
Absolutely. That's Brent Dougherty. We appreciate it so much, Brent. All right, Kyle, when we come back from the break, we've got another guest that will be joining us. His name is Radi Nabulsi. Radi is he works for UGAsports.com, and he covers the Georgia Bulldogs. So we've had Brent, who covers the the UT Vols and Vanderbilt. We've got Radi, who covers UGA, so we'll get his take as well coming up here in just a minute. So we'll do that when we get back after this break on Dad's Watching Sports. Big news in the Dad's Watching Sports podcasting world. You've heard us mention it on the show already. We are now part of the Off the Ball Podcast Network. We're super excited to be joining the team of great shows, hopefully adding a little dad flavor to the mix. You can check out Off the Ball Podcast and Off the Ball Network on all your social media sites. Just search Off the Ball Network. And while you're there, give them a like and a follow. You won't regret it. And welcome back to Dad's Watching Sports. Michael Draper and Kyle Castles. We just had Brent Dougherty of 104.5 The Zone in Nashville. He's the co-host of the 3HL broadcast. Kyle, again, Monday through Friday from 3 to 7, 4 hours of radio, 5 days a week. Kyle, we just do 1 hour a week. Props to Brent, Don, and Ron on their show there.
Yeah, I mean, we could maybe do 4 hours a week. But I got a feeling you couldn't look at my face that long.
I don't know that I could. I've seen you the past three. Like today is the third day in a row that we've seen each other. Yeah. And yeah, I don't know that I could tolerate that. But you know, as much as I love you, Kyle, but yeah, kudos to them. And just great stuff. Talking about, you know, Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC, some takeaways from media days, and then getting into some dad life, of course. And we're going to continue, Kyle, some great SEC talk. We're joined by Radi Nabulsi now, and Radi works for UGAsports.com as he covers the Georgia Bulldogs. Radi, thanks so much for joining us on Dad's Watching Sports. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk before we get into specifically to some Georgia questions. Let's talk league expansion. It came out, just there on Wednesday at the SEC Media Days. Texas and Oklahoma are joining the conference. It looks like it's tentatively set for 2025, although I think everybody knows it's probably going to happen before that. Just your thoughts and what everybody was talking about from the Georgia perspective of those two teams joining the conference.
Well, a lot of Georgia fans were kind of upset because the idea of having a powerhouse like Oklahoma join and a traditional power like Texas join, it just seems like it's going to be that much harder to make it to the championship, that much harder to make it into the playoffs when those guys are in your own division. And then there was the speculation that Alabama and Auburn might get moved into the East, or is it going to be pods or what's it going to be? And I try to tell people, look, I'm not going to tell you what to think, but that is a really overblown fear. And I don't mean that to put down Oklahoma or to put down Texas, but Georgia had already scheduled home and away series with both Oklahoma and Texas. So Kirby Smart obviously wanted to play him because he has to prove all those deals. He's not going to tell Josh Lee to, hey, set up a home and away with Oklahoma if he doesn't want to play him. So they were already doing it. I think what's bigger than the SEC expansion is the playoff expansion. Once the playoff expansion, 12 teams, now your perennial powerhouses will be getting in there, and you'll be going up against the Texas Oklahomas. I do think it makes it a little bit tougher for some teams, to kind of maybe pull kids out of Texas. Georgia was going after, they had a commitment for Bear Alexander, one of the top defensive tackles in the nation. And he decided he wanted to stay closer to home, and he went to Texas. He's looking at Texas A&M. He went up there and visited and said, yeah, after this visit, I'm going to decommit from Georgia. The idea being that I could stay closer to home and play in the SEC, and that's driving Texas crazy. So now Texas wants that ability to get those kids, to come play at Texas. So I think it might make it a little tougher for schools to pull kids out of maybe the Midwest and pull kids out of Texas because now there are more options closer to home. But other than that, to me, I see it's a good thing. If you're talking payouts, in the range of $60 to $70 million a year because of your new TV deal, I can't see why any school would turn that down.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you mentioned the moving teams to divisions or going to pods. And so, Georgia, outside of the Georgia Tech rivalry, the two big rivalries they have in the SEC is the largest cocktail party in Jacksonville against Florida. And then the Auburn-Georgia rivalry, if I remember right, is the oldest rivalry in the South or something like that, right? How important are those two games to Georgia fans or if they had to give one up because of the way pods worked out, is there one they would give up more readily than the other?
If they had, to answer your first question, those are paramount games. I think they would give up Georgia Tech before they gave up one of those two. So, and that's not to say that they don't love old-fashioned hate, as they call the Georgia Tech game, but it's not a conference game, and Georgia Tech hasn't been a really good rival for many years. Georgia's pretty much beat the sand out of them, going ever since Mark Richt showed up in Athens years ago. So it's not, it's kind of a one-sided rivalry. They have won a few here and there, but it's just not been that many. But the Auburn game is huge. Auburn and Georgia are very much alike. Georgia fans don't like to hear that, but they're both they're very similar in their fan bases, the dedication, the love, the fanaticism is just through the roof on both of them. Neither one of them likes Alabama, so that kind of works out. They have that in common. But the real hatred is between Georgia and Florida, and so many people build their fall trip schedules around the Georgia-Florida game. A lot of people say, well, if Georgia-Florida moved to pods or whatever, you'd have to move that game out of Jacksonville so you can have home and away. So I'm like, no, you don't understand. The fan base loves that game. They love going to Jacksonville. A lot of people have homes in the area down on Amelia Island, Jack's Beach and stuff like that. They plan for the last, or around Halloween, that last Saturday in October, first Saturday in November, to be in Jacksonville for sort of a family reunion. You see RV City, where all these RVs show up next to the stadium. There's hundreds of them. It's insane. And if you try to tell Texas and Oklahoma they have to get rid of the Red River Shootout, they're going to punch you in the head. It's just not going to happen. So
right.
Georgia and Florida are not going to lose that no matter what. And I'm sure that when they were the discussions came up, they said, look, we're not going to lose this game. We're not going to lose that game. Throw Texas and Oklahoma onto whatever we're doing. That's fine. We'll go to 9 conference games if need be. We're not losing these games. So I'm sure Tennessee had the same thing, and South Carolina had its stuff, and Arkansas. Everybody had, I'm sure, some caveat that that had to be met before they voted yes. And I'm sure Georgia's was to keep Auburn and Alabama as their, I don't want to say permanent rivals, but they don't want anything to come in between them.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know, obviously this is the biggest news that's come out from media days and really will continue to be the biggest news really over the course of the college football season. And we'll see if it's 2025 or it's 2023 or, when it is that they actually make the shift over. But any other takeaways, either from a Georgia standpoint or just that you had from SEC media days that you thought, this is interesting heading into what will be the upcoming season?
I'm amazed that guys can talk for 30 minutes and not say anything. I should be surprised by that, but it's really gotten to the point where, you had your everyone's had so much media training. Back in the past, you could have some guys who would actually let something slip, but even your wild cards, the Mike Leaches of the world, the Lane Kiffins of the world, how many headlines were there? How many cross SEC headlines came out of SEC media days? We're like, oh, I can't believe he said this, or this guy promised that. There was no bulletin board material. There was no promises. In years past, we've had, coaches avoiding going to SEC media days because they didn't want to be served with a subpoena. This year, you don't even have fans there. So it was good. It's good to be back. To actually see reporters in the same room with a coach instead of doing it on Zoom.
Yeah.
So that was my favorite thing about it, to actually have, I had a couple reporters there for UGA Sports, and they're standing up asking questions and, getting to do a scrum with Kirby Smart before before he went and spoke to the general population, if you will. They get, all the coaches will meet with the local beat writers and give them one additional interview or ask some pointed questions there. And he basically gave our writers some updates on stuff that we knew about, injury updates and stuff like that. So that was, kind of good, but there's just nothing there. And we're going to see the same thing across the SEC landscape, because those practice reports are going to be minimal.
Yeah.
There's the amount of material that comes out nowadays is so limited, and everyone's gotten so good at speaking so long without saying anything. It's very frustrating. That's why you have to tune to check out a site like mine at UJ Sports, where we actually have people who watch practice and come give us real scoop instead of coach speak.
Yep. Well, let's talk like coaches real quick. Speaking of coach speak, Georgia's got a big opener this year against the Clemson Tigers. I think that's how Dabo would say it. I think that's going to be the biggest game of the opening weekend. Georgia, I feel like, should be favored in that one just because they are not breaking in a brand new quarterback. I know that DJ got a little bit of playing time when last year, but what do you think? What is Georgia going to have to do to pull a win out in week one?
Well, actually, Georgia is not favored in that game. If you look at the early Vegas lines, they let Clemson in that situation. And Georgia's not breaking in a new quarterback, but the one they had only had 4 games, after he'd come off an ACL injury. And he played against 4 of the weaker teams in the conference. So he wasn't going up against the Florida and Alabama. So I don't want to say the jury's out on, JT Daniels, but it'll be interesting to see how he plays against a much stronger team. You're not taking on a Mississippi State or somebody like that.
Whoa. Mississippi State's a strong team.
So that hits home here, Roddy. Kyle is a Mississippi State fan, so I love that.
Right between the eyes.
That's right. I love the controversial talk already on the show. Kyle, do you have a rebuttal as a recent national champion from the Bulldogs?
Yeah, catch us on the diamond.
Nobody's rooting harder for them on the diamond than I was. I was very excited for them to win that. And that's not just conference pride. It's, I want somebody to win a national championship that hadn't done it before. So very happy for the Bulldogs. The Bizarro Bulldogs, as they're called by Georgia fans. So that's rude, but that's how they see it. But JT Daniels, you kind of know what you have with him. But you don't have George Pickens, who is going to be one of the top receivers in the nation. You've got this great stable of backs. And you have a great stable of offensive linemen, but we're not sure where they're going to line up. Georgia has a couple of 5-star linemen who are on their second team. So it's you've got great bodies up there, but you're just not sure where you're going to put them. So who steps up for George Pickens? Who gives the quarterback time to throw? Who opens some holes on the offensive line for all those running backs to go through? And does Todd Monken finally get to open up this offense? Kirby Smart's a very traditional guy, kind of a ground and pound guy. That's not to say that they didn't throw the ball like crazy when JT Daniels got in there in those last 4 games, but the idea is that Georgia's going to run a conservative offense, and now is Todd Monken's time in year 2 to actually do something more exciting because he has a quarterback who can sling it. He's got Arik Gilbert transferring in from LSU. You've got Darnell Washington, a 6'7", 260-pound behemoth of a tight end that you'd like to throw to. You got Brock Bowers, another tight end, who out of California is maybe one of the best athletes on the team, fast, can get down the field. So Georgia's got all these offensive weapons, but are they going to be able to use them? Are they going to be able to keep everybody happy? Will they be able to execute is the number one question. And you're also replacing that entire secondary. You have 5 guys in the NFL right now on that secondary from last year. Your starting corners are gone. Who replaces the cornerbacks? You have a Lewis Seen at safety, but who backs him up? Who's out there beside him other than Chris Smith? Who takes over at star? You're getting Darian Kendrick as one of your cornerbacks. The best cornerback Clemson had last year by many accounts. He's now on the Bulldogs, and he'll be facing his old team in week 1. So a lot of questions, but from a Georgia standpoint, they're not like a lot of teams where you're like, well, who are we going to get to play safety? We don't have anybody. Georgia's got a lot of bodies, but you don't know how good they're going to play. So that's the real question. It sounds boring, but hey, it's execution.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to hear that because that's not a sexy talking point.
Absolutely. Well, I gotta throw in another question here for you, Roddy. Kyle mentioned his Bulldogs when you unknowingly took a shot at him there.
I knew I was being rude.
So I'm a University of Kentucky fan, and over the past 3 or 4 years,
worse.
I know it's awful. Even over the past couple of years, Kentucky's kind of made what I would say is a pretty significant jump. Mark Stoops has done a great job, but they've always kind of fallen short against Georgia. I think it was 3 years ago. We had you guys at home. It was winner goes to the SEC East, and you guys blew us out. From a Georgia perspective, does Georgia even see Kentucky on the radar, or is it just like this? While Kentucky's improved some, they're not a threat to us in the East at all.
They are not a threat, and I don't mean to be flippant about it, but when you look at what Georgia's had 3 number 1 recruiting classes, there are 3 5-star running backs on the team. There are 4 or 5 5-star offensive linemen. There's the number 1 and number 2 tight ends from 2 years ago. Both the number 1 and number 2 guy are there. Inside linebacker, you got 3 Jacoby Dean, who's all SEC. You got another couple who could be that. Keely Ringo, number 1 cornerback in the nation. This year will be his first year there. You take a Derrick Kendrick, who people think is a first-round cornerback. Trayvon Walker is a defensive tackle who covers kickoffs. He runs down the field like a gazelle at 280 pounds. So they're loaded. It's the same thing with Alabama. Alabama has the best players.
Yep.
You don't even have to have the greatest coaches, but when your players are that much better than everybody else's, an average coach can win with them, and that's why Georgia was able to, rip off a couple, Kirby Smart series, win SEC East championships pretty easily. He won 3 in a row.
Yep.
Then he lost a quarterback, and of course it doesn't run well without a quarterback, and so they lost last year. In a weird year, but if he's got a decent quarterback, they're just – I hate to say it, but I don't even think so. Now, I go to Georgia-Florida games. I've been doing this since 1993, and I watch Georgia lose games they should not lose in Jacksonville. I'm not going to say that Georgia's got that game won, but I feel a lot better about Georgia's chances against Florida than I did last year, especially with the whole quarterback situation. If they go in with a healthy QB, I like Georgia's chances. And they had chances to even win it last year, despite the craziness that was going on with their two quarterback system.
Yeah.
But I do think Kentucky is a much bigger threat to Florida than Florida and Kentucky are to Georgia. I think Georgia right now is just, from a talent standpoint, has separated itself out. They're a good ways ahead. But Kentucky is a very popular choice to be second in the SEC. And you saw they actually got a couple one or two SEC East predictions from the media days folks. And people were like, everyone was mad that someone gave South Carolina a vote. But I didn't see anybody really complaining about Kentucky because Kentucky, you look at the lines of scrimmage where everything starts.
Yeah.
Got great lines there. They just didn't have a quarterback.
Right.
So just like Georgia didn't have a quarterback last year, they lost the SEC East. Hell, give them a quarterback. That changes everything. Yeah. So decent quarterback play, great in the trenches. That is, that's exactly how Alabama was winning. Great quarterback, to get the ball to playmakers in the space, and then you can't run on them because they got great defensive line, and they can run on you because their guys can push you out of the way. That's SEC football in a nutshell.
That it is, and I've been a big fan of what Mark Stoops has done up there, and I'm hoping they can tighten that gap on Florida, like you said, and maybe eventually get over the clip there with you guys. So as I mentioned, in discussions with you about coming on our show, we talk sports. Obviously, we've been doing that and talking some SEC football, but we also talk dad life on this show. As we're both dads, we've got young kids, and we talk about how these kind of all intertwine. And when I was, looking for potential guests, I saw in your Twitter bio, the very first thing you mentioned is about your son. And so tell us just a little about family life and kind of maybe specifically how sports fit in with all of that.
Yeah, my number one claim to fame is being the dad of Ali Nabulsi. So, I named him after Muhammad Ali and some other people in our family who are also named Ali, A-L-I. He's 17. He just left my house to go to the gym. He took my car. He works out all the time. He's a sports fanatic. He does cross country, then he does wrestling, then he does track. Last year he went to state in all three. And it's very rare that you have a big wrestler who can run cross country. So he's a fitness freak. But you ask somebody about their kids, they're going to talk for 45 minutes about how great they are, or they're going to complain about him. I have no complaints. I am blessed beyond words because I've got the perfect kid. He's fantastic. He's a good Christian boy. He's very He loves his neighbor. I just let him work for 2 months down in Orange Beach. He and a friend of his, they worked every day, every day but 2 in July. They were on the beach about 6 o'clock. They didn't get home until 7:30, or they get back to the office till 7. They got back to the house at 9 o'clock, and then 9:30. Basically, 6-7 days a week, 13, 14-hour days, working the beach service down there. They made a lot of money.
Yeah.
But the point being, these are kids. I've got a kid who will work. And of all the things that I'm proudest of him, great grades, all these students, like I said, good Christian, great athlete. He has a work ethic. I don't know where he got it from. I guess he got it from his mama, or maybe he's born with it. Maybe you're born with it, like blue eyes or blonde hair. But to me, work ethic, I keep telling him, said, son, I don't know what's going to happen in your life. I don't know if you want to work, on a beach the rest of your life. You want to dig ditches, or you want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer, you want to be a crop tester. I don't know. But if you keep up that work ethic that you have, you're going to be a success, because people don't want to work like that. And so I walk around every day just thrilled to my bones, thrilled to my DNA that I have a son who's not afraid to work hard. And again, don't know where he learned it, but I'm so excited about it because I know that he will be a success, and it gives me peace of mind. He's got to make a college decision. He came to me tomorrow and said, Dad, I don't want to go to college. I want to be a welder. I'm like, okay, well, I know you're going to be the best damn welder there's ever been, because you're going to work harder than anybody else. So
yeah.
I'm just, I'm thrilled to death to be his dad, because I know at some point I'm going to be very, very proud of what he's done. So
for sure.
He follows my sports stuff, but he's not a fanatic. He's more into his sports. He's like, yeah, Dad covers Georgia football, but I got to go wrestle, or I'm going to go run track. So he meets a lot of the athletes and meets a lot of players, but it never really phases him, because that's just what Dad's always done. He's grown up around these guys. I don't think he realizes how good he has it.
So you got your son, and it sounds like he's been playing sports a lot. What's your best sports memory with him so far? Maybe something he's done or accomplished, maybe a memorable moment watching with him, just anything.
My favorite memory is different than his, or maybe it is, but I coached him a lot in a lot of different sports, and that was, if I died tomorrow, there'll be a smile on my face, because I got to coach him and be around him and just enjoy his company. There was last year, for his team to go to state, they were wrestling a very good program at George Walton Academy, and he went out. His team was down, and they were in regionals, and he needed a pin, and he was going up against one of the best guys at George Walton. And he was the last wrestler, and his coach told him, said, look, you can beat him, but we won't go to state. If you pin him, I think it's the difference between 6 points and 3 points. If you pin him, we get 6 points, and we'll go. And I almost would have killed the coach. I'm like, wait, you just went and dumped that on his head. Just let him go out there. You talk about pressure. And this kid's an all-state performer. My son hadn't been to state before, and his team hadn't been to state, I don't think, maybe since the 80s or something. It's not a big program at Athens Christian where he goes to school. And he did it. And his team, he pins a kid. Everybody, in the waning seconds, everyone goes nuts. It felt like it should be a Hollywood movie. I'm like, I'm a writer. I write for a living. I couldn't have written this script.
Mm-hmm.
It's Rocky too, and I was thrilled. But he told me the other day, he's like, when he was working this beach service down Orange Beach, he mentioned something about getting acclimated to the heat. He said, yeah, I remember, Dad, when we would go to practice, we'd get in the car in the middle of summer, going to football practice, and you'd tell me to turn the air off, roll down the window so we could get acclimated to the heat before we got to practice. You see all those other kids get out of that air-conditioned minivan, and they start sweating and they start throwing up, when they have to do runs. But you made me get hot before we got here. I hated you, but it taught me to get ready. And I'm like, trying not to cry because he remembered something I told him. So it's just a pride. It's funny. The point being, I remember this crazy win that he had that he never talks about because it was a team win. To me, it's my son hit the winning pin and to send his team to state. The dad pride. His most memorable thing is the fact that I made him roll the windows down instead of using the AC. So we never know when we're going to make an impression on kids. We have no idea what they're going to remember. We think it's the big things, but sometimes it's the smallest things. So
that is so true. That's a great point that you brought up. And Kyle and I both have very young kids. Like I've got a nearly 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. Kyle's got a 6, a 4, and a 1-year-old. So we're in a completely different stage of life. But I think that's very applicable to us too. Is you just never know what they're going to pick up on or what it is that those little things that you can say that are going to have that impact. So that's such a cool story. And I really appreciate you sharing both of those about the winning pin and then about rolling down the windows. Cause like you said, you have no idea what it is that your kids are going to pick up on that are really going to impact them. Last couple of questions here for you, Roddy, and we'll let you get out. So we talk a lot on this show about just like legacy and about the things that you hope to instill in your kids. And obviously it sounds like you've done a great job with Ali on some of the things that you've instilled with him. And even though it may not be work ethic, but we talk a lot about that kind of stuff. And so my question for you is like 3 words that you think your son would use to describe you. This could be right now. This could be when you're retiring and he's at your retirement party or whenever, but you know what 3 words that you think he would use to describe you?
Out of touch. He's all together. You guys are going to have so much fun when your kids get to that 12, 13, 15 years old and you start using the slang that's current and it drives them bonkers. Oh, it is glorious. I tease my son constantly. I grew up with 4 brothers, and we fought like cats and dogs. I mean, my wife and I were lucky to have the one child, but I knew, I'm like, dude, if you're coddled like your mother coddles you, you're getting eaten alive in school. So I started teasing him right off the bat. I give him hell not all the time, and we go back and forth. He gives it right back. But what I would hope if he looks at his dad and has to come up with 3 words, I would hope his first one would be the loyalty.
Sure.
My dad told me that, and again, this is just something it was a throwaway sentence Dad said years ago, but it stuck with me because again, you never know when kids are always paying attention, but you never know which one they're going to remember. But my dad said growing up, it was he and his brother against his cousin, he and his cousin against the world, and it was basically those closest to you. That's your family, your immediate family against everybody, and then your extended family against everybody else. Just that sense of loyalty, and I hope that my son would have that, or see that in everything we do. My loyalty to him. Dedicated would be the other word that I hope he'd use, because I just try to whatever I do, I try to do it number one. I try to make my site the number one site. When it comes to being a dad, I try to be the best dad possible. When it comes to being a husband, I try to be the best husband possible. It's and it makes life easier when you're so focused, when you're dedicated like that. And the last one, I would hope to be generous. I try to give back, as much as possible. And I hope he sees that. He keeps snacks in his car so that when someone comes up to him, when he stops at a red light or something, and someone, comes up with a little sign saying, hey, out of work, out of luck, do you have any, can I have any money or something like that? He can reach into his car, give him a granola bar, give him a water, give him stuff like that, and try to take care of his fellow man, to be generous and kind. And I'm sure he learned it from his mother. He'd probably use that word for her, but I hope that the way we brought him up, I hope he would extend me that same courtesy of saying generous, because I want those things for him. But the first thing he says, hey, what's 3 words about your dad? He's going to be completely out of touch. He has no idea what's going on.
Yeah, I have a feeling that we're both headed down that, especially with our daughters. Kyle, they are going to absolutely think that we are that way. All right, Roddy, last thing.
But it's the greatest fun of all time, man. There's nothing more fun than driving kids crazy.
Oh, of course.
If I realized it was going to be this fun, I probably would have adopted like 6 more just to make their lives live hell. The entertainment value is off the charts.
No doubt about it. Yeah, I can't wait for it. My daughter is almost 5, and I just can't wait for the day that I get to embarrass her in front of all of her friends in middle school. It's going to be.
It's glorious. And now I realize our parents were doing it on purpose back when we were embarrassed by them. But we thought that they were just completely untouched. Like, no, they were getting together after work or after school and just laughing their butts off at us. So.
No doubt about it. All right, last question here for you, Roddy. And this one might be a tougher to answer, but it's not quite as heavy hitting as the previous question. So we do some brackets on this show. So we've done best sports movie bracket. We've done best sports venue bracket. We actually just finished that up a couple of months ago. Wrigley Field was the number one choice for our show and a few others that voted on the best venue in sports. But we are moving as we head into college football season. We're going to launch a 32, team bracket for the best tailgate food. So if you had to pick your number one overall seed in the best tailgate food bracket, what would you go with?
That is a toughie. So you want something that while you're out there, especially I get it if it's like an early game, a noon game, that changes things. But a 3:30 game, 7 o'clock game, you can't have something too heavy because everyone's going to go, oh, I've got to have barbecue. Yeah, but then, you're knocking back all that handle of Fireball. That's still not going to mix that well. Number one food, that's a toughie. All right. I don't even know if people make this, but they should. Being and doing what I do, I never get to tailgate anymore. We usually get to the game about 3 hours beforehand to start setting up and proper stuff, so I don't tailgate anymore. But being that we're in Georgia, I'm going to go with sausage balls.
Okay. Yep. Oh, yeah. I know I appreciate a good sausage ball. That's a that's a good choice.
But again, it's protein, so it's not like it's just chips and everything, and you're not getting all the saltiness. But they can be enjoyed hot or cold. So if you've got them out there and you've been there for a while, you open up that Tupperware thing, whip out a sausage ball, you're good to go.
No doubt.
Different and sauces,
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, if it's an early game, if it's 11 a.m. kickoff, you get a sausage ball. That's perfect. And
it's breakfast, But if it's a 7 o'clock game and you're knocking those back about 4:30, you're not dying. It takes a hungry. It takes off your hunger. You're not buying a $17 hot dog inside the stadium.
No doubt about it. Well, he is Radi Nabulsi. He's the publisher of UGAsports.com. And Roddy, thanks so much for joining us and talking dad life and UGA football, SEC media days, et cetera, et cetera. We really enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing what you guys have to cover over there at UGAsports.com, which I would imagine is going to be a very successful season for the Bulldogs.
Well, we hope so, because as long as our readers stick with us, that's good. And they stick with us a lot better when Georgia's winning. So.
That's right.
Hey, you guys take care. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks so much, Roddy. We appreciate it. All right, Kyle. Well, we got one quick break, and we're going to come back and get into a few topics before we get out of here for the week. We'll be right back on Dad's Watching Sports. Coming up next week on Dad's Watching Sports, it is episode 76, and we move from the SEC to the Big 10 and the Big 12. A lot of shakeup in the Big 12, and we'll talk about that with Anwar Richardson. He is with the Longhorn Network, also with Rivals.com, covering the Texas Longhorns, and we'll cover the Big 10 with Jay Stevens from the Locked On Buckeyes podcast. All that and more next week on Dad's Watching Sports. We'll see you then. We're back here on Dad's Watching Sports. Michael Draper and Kyle Castles. We've been talking all SEC, all things SEC football. We had, if you didn't catch us at the beginning of the show, go back and check it out. If you're listening to the podcast, I'm sure you did. But Brent Dougherty of 104.5 The Zone joined us earlier on. And then we just had Radi Nabulsi of UGAsports.com talking all things Georgia Bulldogs. Kyle took a shot not only at your Bulldogs from Mississippi State, but also my Wildcats. It's not very often that we have a guest come on and just immediately take shots at our team, but I will tip my hat to Roddy as he did that. And when you cover a team like Georgia, who's just dominated the East over the past, 5 to 7 years, you can pretty much do that and be okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't ask for it. I'm sitting over here just hanging out. He just throws out Mississippi State as not a formidable team or whatever. And you, however, glutton for punishment, you were like, well, what do you think about Kentucky? And he just told you he doesn't think about Kentucky.
I know. I would hate if that audio of the Kentucky's not a threat somehow wound up in the hands of Mark Stoops and the coaching staff and ended up in the locker room, because that would just be awful. I'd hate that.
Yeah, that would be terrible, wouldn't it?
It would be. Thanks for checking in with Dad's Watching Sports. If you like our show, which I hope you do, and if you're listening to it, chances are you do, go ahead and hit us with a subscription and give us a rating and review. We'd love for you to do that. And you can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts, also on our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Kyle, I mentioned earlier the tailgate food bracket. I'm excited about that. 32 foods. We're going to launch it in a couple of weeks. It's going to be in partnership with our good buddies over there, the Bracketeers. We haven't figured out all the details yet, but they're going to be involved with that somehow, and we're looking forward to that. So what's your number one overall seed, Kyle? Because you gave me flack about Wrigley being a 3 seed. So maybe you'll actually give me some input on this one.
It didn't matter. Wrigley won.
It didn't, I guess. What's your number one overall tailgate food?
Look, I think Brent was right. Like, it's got to be chicken wings. And I don't care if you're frying them, if you're throwing them on a grill, if you're smoking them, they're chicken wings, and I'm happy.
That's going to be a tough one to beat.
It's a tough out. Absolutely.
There's no doubt about it. I think Roddy brought up a good point, though. It's what time is the game? Because if it's an 11 a.m. kickoff, man, I want some breakfast. I want the breakfast tailgate. Give me some eggs.
So that was an interesting thought. The 11 o'clock kickoff, you need breakfast. The sausage balls fit, all the way across. And, you have your sausage balls with beer, whiskey, whatever it is you're drinking. Or you can have them in the morning with a nice cold screwdriver and
my man, now we're talking. I'm hungry and I'm thirsty. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So stay tuned for that. It'll be coming out in the next couple of weeks. Also next week, Kyle. So we're shifting gears from the SEC to the Big Ten and what was formerly known as the Big 12, or I guess will still be for a while.
You say for a while, like next year they're gone, right?
Yeah, pretty much. It's over for them. But we got Jay Stevens. He hosts the Locked On Buckeyes podcast. Is also a big fan and a big friend of the Off the Ball Network. Jay is going to join us to talk Big Ten football. He was at Big Ten Media Days covering it for the Locked On Buckeyes podcast. So we'll talk with Jay. And then Anwar Richardson, a former NFL player, former Texas Longhorn, now works for the Texas Longhorn Network. Also covers Texas for Rivals.com. Anwar is going to join us to talk about Texas, about the Big 12. I know we'll have a lot to talk with him about with this move to the SEC and what that looks like. But also we're going to talk a little bit about the Big 12 and what the season looks like for Texas. So big week next week as we cover 2 conferences and have 2 great guests to do that.
Yeah, I'm really excited about and nothing against the Big Ten, but let's be really honest, the major story in college athletics. And I know we're talking football, but I mean this is athletics. We're talking about 2 major programs moving to the premier conference, athletic conference in college sports. And one thing we haven't mentioned yet, and maybe we can bring it up with the Big Ten guy, is apparently the SEC has at least reached out and talked to, or at least rumors are they've reached out and talked to Ohio State and Michigan to try and build this super conference. I'm curious, how that feels, what Ohio State fans are feeling there. I'm curious what Texas fans are feeling, because I if you're just looking at money, this is a great thing, right? Like, we're going to come into the SEC. There's more money here. We just do it better in the SEC, right?
Yep.
But if I'm a Texas fan, I look up and I'm like, we can't even get to our own conference championship in the Big 12. What makes us think we can come over here and do it in the SEC? I'll be honest, if I'm any head coach at Texas, I'm a little bit worried, because you don't stay at Texas if you're not competing for championships, and all of a sudden it's about to get a lot harder.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, they haven't even been winning the Big 12. So what is that going to look like? I mean, from a football standpoint, from a basketball standpoint, I know Texas made a good run this past year with Shaka Smart, but they had not been very good up until then under his leadership. And now they're coming to the SEC, which, predominantly the SEC has not been a powerhouse in college basketball, but man, has that changed with Alabama, Arkansas, Tennessee, Florida, LSU, Kentucky. I mean, Auburn. The SEC is deep in basketball, and Oklahoma and Texas have had some success, both conference-wise and nationally. How are they going to fit in? Then you think of baseball. I mean, the SEC is the best conference in the country in baseball, and Texas made it to the College World Series,
but got beat by who put them out? Who was set to put them out?
I believe it was the Bulldogs.
You daggum right, it was the Bulldogs.
It was. So it's going to be interesting. All right, Kyle. Last couple of things before we get out of here for the week. SEC, we were going to ask both of our guests. We just simply kind of ran out of time because they had such great stuff to kind of give us their picks for the SEC East and West. You and I are going to launch our official picks on our social media. So for those of you listening and checking out the live stream, check out our social media pages for those picks. But Kyle, I'll let you give a teaser. Who do you have winning each division this year and facing each other in the SEC championship game?
So there's an easy, I'm not going to say names, right? We're going to tease this. There's an easy pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to do my best Lee Corso, but not so fast. I understand. Like, Roddy he doesn't think anybody's a threat in the East to his Georgia Bulldogs. There's talent in the East.
Dang right there is.
There is talent in the East.
Resides in Lexington, KY.
Look, there's talent in the Bluegrass State. There's talent in the Sunshine State. Right, in Florida Sunshine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure. I said that, like, I may be wrong. No. There's talent in both of those states. And look, there's Texas A&M. There's talent in Baton Rouge.
Watch out for the Bayou Bengals.
I'm not. Look. There's the easy pick. But when you really start to dig, but also like it's hard to pick against. Say that.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, like I said, make sure you're checking out our social media this week, and we'll get our official picks out. Kyle, last thing we'll go here. I teased this at the beginning of the show. We made our way to the Garth Brooks concert last night, or at least we attempted to. I meant to ask Brent this, and I completely forgot to ask you. Maybe we need to get him back on some time to say, Brent, like, man, if you know somebody within the city of Nashville that's like responsible for traffic control or something, like the fact that it took Suzanne and I an hour and a half to get from East Nashville about 2 miles into downtown, park, and then walk to the stadium.
Well, look, you screwed up. I got down there in a hurry. You just went the wrong way.
I went the wrong way, but it still shouldn't have taken us an hour and a half. But we get there. It's raining. It's storming. They bring everybody underneath the awnings and back in the air conditioning, or at least that's where we got to go. And we sit there and we wait. And we wait and we wait and we wait. And we're like, is this happening? We pull up the radar. It doesn't look like it's happening. And we chose to leave. I mean, I don't know if you guys were this way. Like when we were walking out of the stadium, that's when they made the announcement, like, show's canceled. We'll figure out something. But it was quite the adventure.
It was an adventure. Heck, even so, like, this is more than just a podcast. Michael and I and our families hang out from time to time away from the show, and we went and had dinner. You and your wife and me and my wife, and the food was wonderful. Yeah,
and let me preface by saying when we were talking about how our night was pretty much ruined by this concert, I said, well, at least we had a great dinner. Dinner was phenomenal.
Yes.
And Kyle's response was like, I mean, it's okay.
I mean, look, the food was wonderful. The company was top notch. There is not better company.
A+.
But, and I'm not going to say the name of the restaurant we were at, but the service was somewhat lacking.
My man was distracted.
He was a little distracted.
Which is probably a good thing. We probably would have ordered a few more drinks than we probably needed to have.
There was somebody that was just drinking water.
That's true. But it was, we got to spend the night almost 2 hours in the concourse, which was great.
Yeah, and we had a decent time. I mean, it was enjoyable talking to you.
Sure, yeah.
But it's not why I was there. I wanted Garth Brooks on the big stage in Nissan Stadium, running all over the place and being Garth Brooks, right?
Yep.
The only person I heard singing "Friends in Low Places" were a bunch of drunk guys.
Yeah.
Hey,
you know, it wasn't bad. They gave their best effort, but it wasn't quite up to par. So, well, hopefully we'll get a chance to make up that. Looks like it's going to be rescheduled at some point in time. So, Kyle, busy week. Again, there's a lot going on in the sports world. I know we didn't even get to. One thing I wanted to get to, we talked about this a little bit with both of our guests about leaving a legacy. We're going to kind of have that theme. I'm going to ask that same question of all of our guests. And then the next couple of weeks, I want to get into that. We had a great sermon at church this morning about leaving a legacy. And I want to get into that as that's obviously very applicable to dad life. But we are out of time, my friend, and it has been great. Again, man, if you haven't gone back and listened to episode 74, do yourself a favor. Kyle, Ryan Watson, Jonathan Board do a phenomenal job. Kyle, seriously, you guys did great. We were not in Bora Bora, but we had a great time, and we were listening to you guys. You did awesome. And so I thank you, sir. I tip my hat to you on the job well done.
Look, we got through it, but it was not as good as it would have been if you were running the show.
Well, I appreciate that. It's getting sentimental in here. It's time to go. We will see you next week on Dad's Watching Sports. Again, Anwar Richardson from Longhorn Network and Jay Stevens of Locked On Buckeye Podcast will join us to talk Big 10, Big 12 next week. We'll see you then. Dad's Watching Sports. See ya.